Alright, YouTube, we are back talking some FF7. We're talking Ever Crisis, but also the remake project, part 3, I guess, specifically. So with our last video, we talked about like the second anniversary, kind of covered the majority of the things there are to talk about from the second anniversary update for Ever Crisis. There was a few kind of like smaller details that I did forget to discuss. Certainly have big implications for Ever Crisis, but also part 3 itself. And it's that with this second anniversary update, they're like kind of teasing Safer Sephiroth for some reason. Why I say for some reason is because if you guys do play Ever Crisis, there is still a lot left in the FF7 story to tell. As some of you may know, with the latest chapter we got for the FF7 story for Ever Crisis, we are only up to the Forgotten Capital, the Aerith death scene, right? Chapter 9, which means that we have the rest of the FF7 story to still go. All of Disc 2 and what little there is on Disc 3, right? Kind of similar to where we are with Rebirth currently. So for me, it's kind of odd for them to be teasing Safer Sephiroth already. Maybe he could be for like an event or something in the game, but that would be strange, right? Like to give away that final boss character in some sort of like an event in the game. So I'm not really sure why they're teasing it. So the tease comes from the current title screen for Ever Crisis. You have this like cloud tunnel in the background, right? And it's raining black feathers, which is obviously, pretty synonymous with the character of Sephiroth. Or I suppose it's possible the black feathers could be for our boy Genesis. Joking aside, though, the Cloud Tunnel does obviously allude to Safer Sephiroth, like 100%. The other detail within the main title that is alluding to Sephiroth is actually with the second anniversary logo, I guess you'd call it, like right behind where it says second anniversary is the Safer Sephiroth wing. And again, I'm not entirely sure why we're teasing Safer Sephiroth already. And again, when it comes to Ever Crisis and the FF7 story, we're only at the end of Disc 1, right? And the game is 2 years old. It's celebrating the 2-year anniversary currently. So in theory, before we'd get to Safer Sephiroth, it'd be another like 2 years or something like that, roughly, somewhere along those lines, right? It's like every few months or so, every several months, we get an update for the FF7 story. So we shouldn't be seeing Safer Sephiroth, or alluding to, or teasing Safer Sephiroth for a while, I would think. And it has people a little bit worried about potentially end-of-service stuff, right? Because they're already teasing the end of the game with this like second anniversary shit, right? Why are we already looking at Safer Sephiroth stuff? And it comes down to not just like the main title screen thing or whatever, but also like with the Advent Children event that we have currently. It's cool. It's also kind of underwhelming, right? Because the event itself is just watching Advent Children. Like if you haven't played it yet, when you get like the story segments that are a part of the event, it's just literally watching Advent Children. And you only fight Bahamut Sin the whole time. There's not even like fights with the Kadaj, Laz, and Yazoo, which is like, why are we not fighting them? We obviously fight Bahamut Sin in the movie, but we also fight those 3, right? The remnants. Also, the Bahamut Sin fight is in, like, the fucking rafters underneath the plate or some shit. Like, a location we see in, I think, Crisis Core. Kind of where we, like, turn off the lamps or whatever in one of the chapters in, like, Remake with, like, Tifa and Barrett, essentially. Which is pretty strange considering the movie that this event is based off of. They fight him in Edge. They couldn't be bothered to model something like this for the backdrop. When we do like these kind of like big events, there's generally like a dedicated story to it, right? When they do like the crossovers with Final Fantasy 9 and Final Fantasy 10, there's like cinematics with like the little chibi characters talking and trying to figure out why the hell we're in like FF6 world or whatever, right? Like stuff like that. There's actually like dialogue with the characters. There's not anything like that in this. It's literally just watching Advent Children and then fight Bahamut Sin. That is it. Which is obviously very, very lazy. Just kind of in general, but also this is the second anniversary update. This should be a pretty big deal. We got a lot of cool shit with the update, right? Playable Sephiroth. He's pretty badass. I've been using him the last couple days or whatever. There's cool aspects of the update, but like this event, especially when you're crossing over with fucking Advent Children, why is it not more interesting? So when it comes to like the discussion of end of service stuff, people feel like the game's getting a little bit lazier because like why are we not putting more effort into this crossover? Also, are we going to start kind of speed running what's left of the FF7 story? Because again, why are we teasing Safer Sephiroth? And speaking of Advent Children, we talked about this in the last video, right? That like the event was labeled as Ever Crisis Edition, which had me a little bit worried. It seems like a lot of people feel the same way too, now that we actually got the event and it's just watching the movie, essentially. Are we not going to get that as a playable thing now in the game? Because that's something we've been led to believe since like the initial reveal of Ever Crisis. The initial trailer we got for Ever Crisis had this screen in it towards like the end of the trailer, where it shows the entire compilation. It says features the entire compilation of Final Fantasy VII and more. And we've all kind of took this over the last like 4 or 5 years now that we'd be able to actually play all of the compilation within Ever Crisis. Also, after this moment within the teaser trailer we got back then, they do show that Crisis Core was playable within Ever Crisis, which we obviously know that now, of course, too. But you would assume, based on what they show on the previous screen and then showing this, that the entire compilation would at some point be playable within Ever Crisis. With this current Avid Children event, is there even a point to doing an Avid Children playable story now? We kind of already covered everything there is, right? I would still like to, but like, are they actually going to add a segment to like the story category within Ever Crisis where you can play FF7, Crisis Core, The First Soldier, and Avid Children? I don't know, because what's the point anymore? We kind of covered everything with this event, really, other than actually getting to fight Kadaj, Laz, and Yazoo. Kind of in the devs' defense, I wasn't entirely sure if they'd ever like confirmed that the compilation itself would be playable, right? If you go to that trailer, it really just says that, you know, the compilation will be a part of Ever Crisis. It doesn't directly say it's a playable thing, right? So you could be kind of vague there. They could be like, well, we never said this. But I did actually come across an interview with Tetsuya Nomura back in 2021, leading up to Intergrade and also talking about Ever Crisis, where he confirms that it is indeed supposed to be playable. So Famitsu asks, for FF7 Ever Crisis, the stories from before Crisis up until Dirge of Cerberus will use a battle system designed especially for Ever Crisis. Does that mean FF7 Avid Children, which was originally a movie, will also be playable? And it's really the second paragraph that we need. The titles are divided into chapters that allows you to have a free gameplay style. The contents will cover the original FF7 and work its way through the compilation of FF7 and include FF7 The First Soldier. They also ask, will the story of FF7 be presented chronologically, or will the story from FF7 Before Crisis leading up to Dirge of Cerberus be rebuilt specifically for FF7 Ever Crisis? You will not need to play each title in its entirety before the next. Rather, each title will have its own chapters that you can select and play. Think of it more like a chronology of FF7. And yeah, that's coming directly from Nomura back in 2021, right? And that was a lot of years ago. It was like February 2021, so we're creeping up on that being like a 5-year-old interview. But at least back in the early days of Ever Crisis, that was the plan, that they would have the compilation be playable within Ever Crisis. And so far, I don't know that that's going to be the case, right? It could still happen. They could still add an Avid Children playable story, but it's like, is there a point? And I don't know when the last time was that they even gave us anything on that. When was the last time they talked about that shit? Because it's kind of hard to track down any kind of interview where they really kind of directly talk about that. So I don't know when the last time was that they would have talked about, well, you know, at some point here in the near-ish future, we're going to do Before Crisis, or we're going to do Dirge, or we're going to do Avid Children, or whatever, right? Like, I don't know when the last time is they talked about that stuff. And the way this event was handled, and the fact, again, that they labeled it Ever Crisis Edition of Avid Children, makes me think we're probably not getting that for at least that story. Maybe they could still do it, you know, Before Crisis and for Dirge of Cerberus. Those could be playable stories, maybe, but we'll see. Because at least with those two stories, you can't just show the movie like they did with this Avid Children event, if this is supposed to be our Ever Crisis version of Avid Children, right? Like, you could maybe just show the cinematics of Dirge of Cerberus, because they are good. They're still, you know, they're comparable to something like Avid Children, right? They still look good for the most part. But with, like, Before Crisis, like, that's an old fucking mobile-only game back in the day, early days of, like, cell phones, right? It's like, you can't just, like, show footage from Before Crisis and fucking Ever Crisis. So they would have to, like, remodel the shit. Even if they wanted to relegate those two stories to events, at least with Before Crisis, they'd have to put effort into it. They'd have to actually remake shit, right? Also, this is just kind of like a random thing I thought of. Like, with Ever Crisis, they're handling the compilation kind of weird because, like, it launched with FF7 and Crisis Core. Maybe The First Soldier was also there. I'm not entirely sure on that. But in terms of, like, the compilation that we have for FF7, like, Crisis Core came last. Like, it came after Before Crisis and Avid Children and Dirge of Cerberus, right? In release order. But also, like, in the timeline of events, it's not even, like, the earliest, right? Before Crisis is Before Crisis Core. So the timeline's kind of all over the place, right? Because we started with, like, FF7, and then we jump back to Crisis Core. Now we're doing this Avid Children event, which is jumping forward. And if you obviously factor in the First Soldier stuff, that's back in the past, too. However far back. And, like, we're at Avid Children, and then, like, at some point they're going to do Dirge and, you know, Before Crisis, whether that's an event or actual story stuff, I don't know. But that'll be, like, jumping forward and back in the timeline, to kind of depending on how you want to look at it. It's just like, the fuck are we doing? I think they'd either be doing this shit based on, like, timeline order or release order for the compilation itself, and they're doing neither. I'm not even sure if they know what they're doing at this point, right? Now, hopping back to the Safer Sephiroth stuff, and we kind of talked about, you know, potentially Part 3 related stuff. Like, I kind of don't want to see Safer Sephiroth in Ever Crisis. I mean, we know what he's supposed to look like, right? More or less. We've seen what he looks like in, like, Dissidia, which is somewhat similar. It's obviously a little bit different. We've also seen, like, the art that's on, like, the Magic the Gathering card, which, you know, Nomura teased something with that potentially, too. Like, we kind of have an idea of what he's going to look like in Part 3, but also I don't want to see him, what he's going to look like in Part 3, before we actually get to the game itself, right? And we know that there's, like, asset kind of, like, reuse between, like, Ever Crisis and, like, the remake games and stuff. So if we get to, like, you know, Safer Sephiroth really, really fast in Ever Crisis before we even get to play Part 3, it's like we're kind of spoiled on what the final boss is going to look like. Kind of what my concerns are with, like, the title screen for Ever Crisis that's very clearly alluding to Safer Sephiroth. Like, are we trying to get to him really quickly? And why is that? Why are we already teasing the final boss of FF7 when you're, like, halfway-ish, maybe, sort of, through the FF7 story with Ever Crisis? It just doesn't really make any sense. It's kind of a weird discussion. We're kind of all over the place, man. I just don't even really totally know what to think, because it's strange how they handle this Advent Children event. It's very underwhelming for a lot of us. The outfits are kind of cool and stuff like that, and getting playable Sephiroth is kind of cool, and like the future updates are coming eventually look pretty interesting. But then it's like the way they handle the event is strange, where you're just watching the fucking movie and then fighting Bahamut Sin over and over and over and over, and that's all you're doing. And more for lesser crossovers in the past, right? Like, this is the second anniversary for Ever Crisis, and also crossing over with Advent Children. Like, you'd think there'd be a crazy amount of effort put into this, and it's just kind of like, eh. Again, also the teasing of Safer Sephiroth, and I don't know what it means. Are we teasing the end of the FF7 story within Ever Crisis? Are we teasing some sort of future event involving Safer Sephiroth? And if it's either of those, why are we doing that already? If it's a future event, why aren't we doing like Bizarro Sephiroth or Sephiroth Reborn from Rebirth, right? Like, that makes more sense. We've already seen that. That's the final boss of the second game. Like, why aren't we doing that instead of something involving Safer Sephiroth or whatever, right? And if you're teasing like, a final boss type fight with the FF7 story within Ever Crisis, why not use that boss instead of Safer Sephiroth? I don't know. It's just kind of a weird situation. I don't know. Of course, that's where I pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts on Ever Crisis? Kind of in general, but especially if you do play the game. And if you do play the game, what are your thoughts on the Advent Children event? How did you feel about it? Because like, I thought it was kind of cool at first, but as I got through the event and realized that that's all we're doing is watching Advent Children, and then only fighting Bahamut Sin, is like, that's kind of strange. Maybe they could update the event. They do add more fights to the event sometimes. So maybe they could add in like Kadaj Lazanizu, and that'd be okay. That would kind of remedy this a little bit for me. It's still underwhelming that we're only watching the goddamn movie, but still. And then also, if you play Ever Crisis, or I guess if you don't, what are your thoughts on them teasing something with Safer Sephiroth on like the home screen, and what do you think it even means? My dudes, that is the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social links in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, ffvii. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like low gain or leave it like Open.